It is my pleasure to introduce Christine Jacks. Christine Jacks is a Duke University graduate who is going to, and a person who's got a degree, not a degree, who studied financial planning at Boston University, and she's presenting a program called How to Avoid the Paycheck to Paycheck Culture. Christine is the author of a book called Money in Your 20s, which is available. And she worked at Kiplinger's, the magazine Personal Finance, and the magazine Mutual Funds. So these are pretty heavy duty magazines, Kristen. We have them here at the library. And we're really happy that you were able to come here and do this program. So please welcome Christine James. One other thing I want to talk about, if you have a question, please use the chat function, which is found on your scroll in the bottom of your computer screen. So all you have to do is touch your mouse or possibly put your finger on the screen and you'll see the chat function, and then you simply type in your question. So again, sorry to interrupt before you started, but now please welcome Christine Jacks.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me well? You can hear me well?
I could hear you well, and I think the whole group can too.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to share my screen. I'm thrilled to be here. Big thank you to Chappaqua Library for hosting. So what we have here is the first sentence from my book, which is my book, Money in Your 20s. And that is, of all the misconceptions about money, the most unhelpful is the idea that handling money is common sense. That's why we're here today. In order to handle money well, money has become very complicated, life is expensive, and there are a bunch of curveballs that you need to learn in order to not overspend, which is how you avoid the paycheck to paycheck culture. So I'd like to start just with a little thought about the things that we pay, where we pay for instruction. Like, I don't think there are any parents out there that would just hand card keys to their teenager and say, good luck, you know, it's pretty straightforward, you'll figure it out. There really aren't parents that would take a kid up a chairlift, aim them down a mountain and say, good luck with skiing, you know, it's not that hard. And you know, especially in affluent communities, there aren't parents that would just let their kids take an SAT or an ACT. They really seek out knowledge and they pay for knowledge. But what's very odd is when it comes to money, a lot of parents are winging it, and they're just hoping that their kids maybe absorbed some lessons at home, which I find doesn't actually work, because some of these lessons are very, they're very unusual and kind of tedious, like taxes. So unless someone is actively going out of their way to teach you, you're not going to know. So let's just sort of get ready for our journey. And I'm glad you're here today. And thanks so much to Chappaqua for making this free, because this kind of advice is usually the advice that you have to pay for. So we only have an hour, and I really had to figure out what is the best use of an hour if I'm going to help you avoid the paycheck to paycheck culture. And so along the lines of saying that money is not common sense, these are sort of the best, you know, the most obvious not common sense ideas around money. There are 5 taxes that shrink a paycheck. If you are just starting out and someone has told you you're going to make $50,000 a year, you might start spending in your mind that $50,000, because no one has told you that taxes take an enormous bite. So that's one thing that we can just quickly get through, get you up to speed, get you educated, and you will not overspend because you didn't realize that money was going to be taken away from you. The other thing we can talk about when we only have an hour is, you know, you clearly have to live within your means. Otherwise, you're worse than living paycheck to paycheck. You're spending your paycheck and then you're incurring debt on a credit card. So we're going to talk about living within your means. And the trick is how to live within your means when classic budgets don't work. If you're worried about living within your means, people will tell you to do a budget. And when you're just starting out, a classic budget will not work. And we will talk about that. And then we'll give you the solution. Finally, we're going to talk about pay raises, because this is another area where people get in a lot of trouble, mostly because they don't understand the progressive nature of taxes. So they look at their paycheck and they go, you know, once they finally figured out the tax bite, they go, oh, maybe I'm paying 25% in taxes. So when I get this raise, I'll have, you know, all that money, you know, minus 25%. And that's not how it works. So in our system, the more you earn, the greater percentage you pay. And I'm going to show you some examples that I think will really surprise you. So let's get started. The 5 taxes that shrink paychecks. And the way I like to remember this is just sort of a give me 5, right? So if you're a parent who's tuned in instead of like a young adult, you can remember, this is how you can remember that you want to teach this to your kid. And just think, you know, give me 5. They're going to be 5 taxes and I have to remember them. And certainly you can always get the book out of the library and get the cheat sheet on all of these. And you can also get this presentation, by the way. So at the end of this, I give you my email address. I also sent the presentation to Joan so she can email it to you. And anybody who wants this presentation can get a copy of it. But here we go. 5 taxes: Social Security, Medicare. Sometimes these two are combined. If you look at a paycheck, it'll just say FICA. But that actually is a combination of Social Security and Medicare. Then there's federal income tax, state income tax, and local income tax. And I include local income tax because of all the people who at some point might work in New York City. And that's definitely where you're going to run into a local income tax. So 2 of these taxes are fixed. They're very easy to understand. Social Security is 6.2% of every dollar you earn. Medicare is 1.45% of every dollar you earn. Very straightforward. After that, things get really complicated because of the progressive nature of our tax system. So the government looks at your earnings and it starts to put them sort of in like buckets, really. So if you look at all of your money, they say, okay, well, we're going to forgive the first $12,200 you earn in a year. That's called your standard deduction. Then we're going to tax the next portion of your income at 10%. Then we're going to tax the next portion of that at 12%. Then once you start getting a little higher, like $52,000 of income, now the government's going to take 22%. We're going to do an example of this later in the program, but you have to understand that progressive means as you earn more, you start to pay a greater percentage. And there are different, I call them buckets. It seems like people understand that a little bit better than brackets, but we'll definitely give you a lot of examples. So let's just take one example, very straightforward. Someone fresh out of college goes to work, let's say, you know, they're lucky enough to get, you know, say they love, you know, the Discovery Channel, and they get to go work at the Discovery Channel. And, you know, a person who's just starting out at the Discovery Channel is given an income of $50,000. Well, that person is probably not expecting, you know, more than $3,000 to go to Social Security, $725 to go to Medicare. They're not expecting a federal tax bill over $4,000, a state tax bill over $2,000, and a local New York City tax of $1,500. So at the end of the day, this person with $50,000 doesn't realize they're going to pay $12,000 in taxes. And this is one of the most common mistakes when young people start living paycheck to paycheck, because they were not expecting to pay $1,000 in taxes each month. So they don't realize that they only have $38,000 left, even though their salary is $50,000. So my number one piece of advice is get the book out of the library and read Taxes 101. It will walk you through, it's very straightforward. It will walk you through how taxes work, some of the quirks, like why is location such a big deal? Why are taxes so much lower in Texas and Florida? These are, you know, you hear people moving to Florida, and this is sort of the impetus behind it. I don't recommend that. I love where I live. I'm sticking around, but you have to know that taxes are coming. One site that I love, absolutely love, and I'm going to try to take us there now. Let's see if I can do this without losing anybody, is Smart Asset, don't make it plural, smartasset.com. Because they have a feature, if you're curious, to test out different tax amounts. So here's this, this company, Smart Asset. I am not paid to say this. I genuinely like these guys. And here we are. Let's see if I can scroll down. So you come here and you say your income. I'm just assuming we're all single at this point because this was for, young people just starting out. But say you want to find out, well, what am I going to pay if my income is, 75,000, and I'm living in New York City. I'm going to put in a zip code that I know from New York City, and let's see what we get. So boom, hopefully everyone can see this. So this person who put in $75,000 of income in New York City, they're paying $21,758 in taxes. Now, let me add to this, I'm not including any tax savings because of credits or deductions or any tax savings based on contributing to your 401k. And this is where personal finance can become very circular, because the reason it's smart to invest in tax help is because of the deductions and the credits. And the reason it's smart to contribute to a 401k is because of the tax savings. So this example is if someone did not avail themselves of really good tax advice and did not use their 401k or get an IRA, they're paying the full amount of the taxes that would be due. And you can go to this site. It's in my presentation. I remind you what it is. And you can put in anything you want up here just to make sure that you are not blinded by the tax bite. So let's go back now. Oh, that wasn't too painful. Good, we didn't lose anything. Okay, so your homework, please. Taxes 101, you have to be on top of it. They can be a really big bite. And if you ignore the tax bite, you will miscalculate the amount of money you have available to spend. So the next thing that's not common sense, it sounds so easy, right? Just live within your means, right? And we almost like disparage people who don't live within their means as though, they just weren't careful enough or they're too materialistic. And I actually don't find that to be true, because classic budgets don't work. So if you've only ever been taught a budget and they don't work for young people starting out, I'll say it again, classic budgets don't work. You'll find that, what you're trying to do is you're trying to predict what you can afford when you're just starting out. And you need all sorts of things when you're just starting out. You need furniture, kitchen gadgets. You're going to be invited to wedding weekends, all that on top of the normal stuff like your phone plan and your student loan bill and your electric bill. So trying to predict what you can afford by listing every possible expense is a good way to feel overwhelmed and a poor way to plan. So in the book, what I talk about is you do not need a budget, but you do need a process. You need something simple, quick, memorable, that will help you predict what you can afford. In the book, I talk about the process. You need a process, so I just call it the process. And it's 6 steps for living within your means. Step 1 is you have to have some idea of what you're going to earn. For people who graduate from college with a job offer and they're going to work for one company and it's a salary, everything's clear and upfront, that's easy. For other people, it's more complicated. Like I know, for example, someone who's both a personal trainer and a classically trained musician. And this person is trying to kind of forecast earnings and saying to themselves, well, I can earn this from the personal training, I can earn that from the music. So for some people are really going to have a challenge trying to figure out what their income is, but you have to do it. You have to start somewhere with some assumption of what you're going to make in a year. Then you're going to deduct taxes. So we just went over that, and you should expect like at least a 20% tax bite, unless you're just not earning anything, in which case you're not going to leave home and you're not going to really need that much of a help anyway. Now, if you are like, for example, this person who is cobbling together income from, personal training, music, or you're sort of in the gig economy and you're doing gigs, maybe you're a yoga instructor, there are all different ways that you could be doing gigs. You have a challenge because taxes are not going to just be taken out of your paycheck. A lot of those people are, independent contractors where they're handed a lump sum every time they work, and they really have a challenge figuring out what they owe the government because there's no classic employer in the middle taking the taxes out. If that's going to be your case, I give away a free chapter of my book. It's called Taxes in the Gig Economy, because it just breaks my heart when young people, on top of all the other learning curves and stresses, have to try to figure out something that's way too complicated. They usually mess it up. And then not only do they have a tax bill they didn't expect, they have penalties and interest. So anybody who wants, I give you my email at the end of this program. I will email you that chapter called Taxes in the Gig Economy. So step one, you have to know your income. Step two, deduct taxes. Step three, you have to think monthly. And if someone is coming from, a college background, they had the mom and dad buffer zone, they had the semester system buffer zone. That's not what, the real world and bill paying is like. Almost everything is monthly. Car insurance and things like that might be every 6 months, but you really have to start thinking monthly about your student loans, your phone plan, your groceries, things like that. Finally, and this is the part that makes it really cool and worthwhile, you divide your monthly net income by 3 to evenly fund 3 allowances. Rent is 1 allowance, other recurring expenses, and then discretionary income. And so instead of making you do a tedious budget and you try to think everything you might spend money on, you don't need to do that. What you need to do is know your income, know the tax consequence of your income, divide by 12 because you're thinking monthly, and then divide by 3. And then boom, you know very quickly what you can afford for rent, what you can afford for all other expenses that are recurring, like groceries, like phone plan, like student loans. And then finally, you have money set aside, which is discretionary. So that's where you're going to get your savings from, and that's what's going to keep you from living paycheck to paycheck if you're careful. If you're indulgent and you want to go on ski weekends and go out to a Mexican restaurant and meet up with friends for drinks 3 nights a week, you're going to have a problem. But at least you're starting out with 3 allowances to guide you and keep you sort of away from trouble. So then the only part, step 5, the only part that's really like a budget is just getting clear about your recurring expenses. And on my website, I make that very easy. I spent a lot of money creating hiring someone to create a program where it's almost fun to track your recurring expenses because I'll show you, we'll get there. Step 6, this is the part that makes us all American. You're unique and you're independent, and you can shift money around these 3 allowances because no 2 people are the same. Maybe you don't care if you live in the dingiest, smallest apartment in the world, as long as you can have a nice car. So if that's you, you can lower your rent allowance and boost your recurring expenses allowance because you personally would rather drive a nice car and you don't care about having such a nice home. Other people are the opposite. They don't even want a car. And if you're heading into New York City, you probably won't have a car. But we'll get there. We'll use an example. So let's go back to that person who earned $50,000. We deducted the taxes, right? So that person had a salary, $50,000. We deducted the taxes. Let's just use $38,000 as a nice round number. Step 3, we're going to take the $38,000. We're going to divide by 12. So I hope you see, instead of a tedious budget, this gives you the relevant information very quickly. You now realize before you even started your job, you don't wait for your employer to tell you about taxes. That's usually too late. That's usually like the person has already agreed to a certain rent and started at their job, and then they find out taxes are too onerous. So you can do the process. The minute you have a job offer, the minute you have an idea of what you might earn, you can do the process and get down to a monthly amount that you have to spend. So in this case, this person has $3,167 to spend. And now we're going to divide by 3, and we're going to create these 3 allowances. So we now know that somebody moving into New York City who earns $50,000 can spend $1,056 on rent. That's it. If they're going to raise that number, they have to lower something else. Allowances themselves are the big trend in budgeting. And it's kind of weird because we call it budgeting at the same time that we're saying that budgets don't work. And so what we mean is just that classic budgets don't work. So if you can get to an allowance format, I mean, you might have heard like 50, 30, 20 is kind of a famous allowance format. I actually don't think that works too well because people are tax ignorant and they don't understand to take the taxes out first. And also they get really blurred between what is like the 50, 30, 20 allowance budget system has you distinguish between what you want and what you need. And what I find is that's impossible to do because, you know, very few people want a really, you know, awful car, but they need a form of transportation. So they're really mixing in, I want a nice car, I need a nice car. No, I want a nice car. It's messed up. So this system will keep you away from that. So we've done step 4, we've come up with these allowances. We know that this person moving into New York City has an allowance of $1,056 for rent, an allowance of $1,056 for all other expenses. And finally, they have discretionary money, you know, set aside, which is keeping them away from the paycheck to paycheck culture if they are careful. So step 5, you've got to get clear about your recurring expenses. This is the only part that's like a classic budget. So if you're going to get an apartment with a roommate, you know, you're going to want internet, you're going to want, you're going to want to cook things. So you're going to have a stove that has a gas bill. You're going to want the lights on. You're going to have an electric bill. So you're going to have to get clear about your recurring expenses. And this is the graphic from my website where it's so easy. All you have to do is literally click on the things that apply to you. So we're going to go there now. So hopefully I'm having some good luck with this, not losing anybody. Let's go to money in your 20s. So it's all spelled out, moneyinyour20s.com. Let's see, money in your 20s. There we go. And I'm just going to come over here and just go straight to the Know Your Nut feature. So the reason it's called a nut is another word for your monthly expenses. And this, you just click here, will bring you to that screen that I showed you. So I'm actually going to use an example from the book. In the book, I actually talk about this person who moved into New York City and with the salary of $50,000. So, you know, like everyone, groceries, not going to have a car payment, not going to bring a car into the city, but will have student loans to repay, will have a Metro card. Let's throw in some, you know, is going to get an apartment with a roommate, so has electricity and gas. And we'll want internet and a phone plan. Nobody gets cable anymore, but they do get like Netflix subscriptions, water and garbage. That's for living in the suburbs if you're renting a house. You're gonna have laundry. Hopefully you're gonna get your hair cut every now and then, maybe a fitness membership, and we'll leave the rest. So here you go. Hopefully you see this is very easy. You click what applies to you, it gives you your list, and now you're gonna start entering numbers. Groceries in New York City are very expensive. So if you stayed, you know, in a much lower cost area, you could maybe make that 250 instead of 350. But we're gonna start entering some reasonable amounts. So student loans are all over the place. The median student loan amount is $220 a month. The average is $400, so it's all over the place, but let's pick 250. A Metro card right now is $127. Electricity, I mean, you just do a little guesswork, it's okay. Better to go high than to go low so you don't get any surprises. And you're also, in this example, this is somebody who's sharing with a roommate. So the roommate would, of course, pay half the electricity and half the Wi-Fi and things like that. And I don't know what phone plan you have. Maybe that phone plan is a little low, but hopefully we can get away with it. Let's do some personal care, some laundry. Oh, actually, you know what? Let's see. Let's do, maybe change this to 20. And we're almost there. Fitness membership, those are all over the place in the city. But here we are. So we've gotten to $1,147 is a reasonable amount for, so here we are, is a reasonable amount for recurring expenses. Okay, so now we're gonna plug this in, and we know that our original spending allowances were, you know, rent, other recurring expenses, discretionary would all be even. And now we've had to make some changes. We did our recurring expenses. We know it's a little higher than 1,056. We also did some research that rents in New York City are preposterous, hopefully going down. But the last time I checked, even this, I might be able to change this. I've heard they've come down only 10%. But the last time I checked, the only way you could live in a safe neighborhood with a roommate was to spend at least $1,300 on rent. And I even get people saying in chat, like they can't find anything that cheap, but hopefully things are getting better now. And then you do step 6, which is you look at what you have to spend in the 3 categories, and then you start moving money around. So if you're going into New York City, you're going to spend more on rent, you're going to boost that. You're going to maybe spend a little bit more on recurring expenses, maybe not. If you don't have any student loans, you could get away with the original allowance. So the only place to grab that money for this example is the discretionary. So you're already bringing your discretionary down, and that's where you save, and that's what keeps you away from the paycheck to paycheck culture. But in any case, when you do step 6, you start with the 3 allowances. When you start to move money around, if you boost one allowance, you have to lower another. So you have to end up with the same net income, monthly net income number, and hopefully that makes sense. So is this person living paycheck to paycheck? Well, not yet, but it's going to depend a lot on their behavior. If this person wants to go out for drinks, I mean, you're taking $720 left over in a month. A month is 30 days. If you just spend $20 a day on things like Starbucks and buying lunch, you know, instead of bringing lunch to the office, you've already spent $600 out of the $720. So this is the part that gets really tricky. Another thing to kind of throw in, which is interesting, is this person, you might say, like, if they spend all their discretionary, they're not saving any money. But Social Security is actually meant to be a retirement savings plan. A lot of people argue that that's not going to happen, that it's going to disappear, but the spirit of it, the idea is to take your money now and you take it away from you so that it can be given back to you later, so that you definitely have a retirement income. That is the idea. So, you know, don't feel too bad when that 6.2% goes out of your paycheck, because it's actually being saved for you, and you can create an account. You can go to the Social Security website and create an account, and you can watch all the money that you're accumulating. Your amounts are tracked. They don't just go into some big pool. Exactly what you pay in is tracked, and the Social Security, the people who run Social Security tell you what you can expect to earn later based on what you're paying in. And let's just hope it all works out and you someday see that money. All right, so more ways to avoid the paycheck to paycheck culture, you know, when money is tight. So definitely the longer you can live at home and get some savings going before you start having rent and big utility bills and things like that, the better. A second income is always a great idea. Even, you know, you're out of college, you're feeling good. I'm sorry, what?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I didn't say anything.
Thought I got a question. You know, I mean, that could be as simple as, you know, babysitting on the weekends. I mean, you know, it doesn't have to be that much income, but when you think about wanting to go out with your friends, if you could kind of get a second income for those frivolous things, then that would be really helpful. Roommates are very interesting. They come in all flavors. So if you happen to get a roommate who has a much higher income, that person might be willing to make concessions and get nicer things in the apartment, and you can pay a lower portion of rent. Become a food expert. The cost of food is a huge burden, which you will learn once you leave home. My favorite, don't move to an expensive city. I tried very hard not to move to New York City after college. I went to work for a magazine, US News and World Report. They were based in Washington, DC. They placed me in the New York City office. So I was trying from the very beginning not to end up in New York City with those high rents. I didn't succeed. But if you have any leeway, if you can go to a less expensive city, then that would be perfect. Finally, you're gonna wanna bank your raise. And that's the last thing, the last piece that we're gonna talk about, because we only do have an hour. And that's when you end up in the paycheck to paycheck culture, because your raise, hopefully you'll get a raise, doesn't pay. And you miscalculate because you don't understand progressive taxes. So like I said, the more you earn, the greater percentage you pay in taxes. And that's at the federal level, the state level, and the local level, if you're in New York City. All three governments are going to look at your paycheck and start taking it apart and take a greater percentage of the dollars that come in over a certain amount. So again, you do get some forgiveness on the federal level. The standard deduction is $12,200. So, you know, if some poor person only earns $11,000 in a year, they're not actually paying any federal tax. So the first $12,200 is forgiven. After that, no one's going to fret. 10%, not a big deal. 12%, not a big deal. But whoa, you get to about $52,000 in income. And now the federal government is taking 22% of every dollar after that. And then that gets repeated with the state and the local government, and you're still paying Social Security and you're still paying Medicare. So here's what's happening. This is what happens to each dollar earned, you know, once you get into that 22% federal bracket. You're going to pay the feds, you're going to pay Social Security and Medicare, New York State, New York City. All of a sudden, 40 cents of every dollar you earn, 40% is going to taxes. This is the big mistake that people make when they get a raise. If you're single, all you have to do is earn $52,000 or more, and you are now in that 40% bracket. So say you were earning $60,000 and you got a $10,000 raise, and you thought to yourself, oh, that's okay. I pay about 22% in taxes. It's not a big deal. No, no, no. Every dollar of that new raise, you're going to lose 40% of it. So again, I went back to, this is hard to see, I understand, but these are just examples from smartasset.com, putting in, for example, $80,000 of income. And that person's tax bill is $23,745. Now, that person is surprised if they look at this marginal tax rate column. That's the part you want to focus on. It's those dollars over $52,000 where you're starting to get 40% in taxes. So again, you can plug these in yourself at Smart Asset, but if you earn $80,000 in income, if you don't do smart things, like get into tax savings accounts or learn about tax deductions or learn about tax credits, probably most relevant to this group is the interest that you pay on student loans. You can completely deduct the interest that you pay on student loans. But the funny thing is, nobody at the IRS is going to tell you that. It's your job to educate yourself about deductions and credits. And again, Taxes 101 in my book, that chapter walks you through deductions and credits, and then also encourages you to just start to learn the big ones and make sure you avail yourself of them. And I'm not against taxes. Everyone has to pay them. We desperately need them. It funds things that we all use, but you certainly shouldn't overpay. And then again, this person who's earning $90,000, if they don't start using tax savings accounts and learning about their deductions and credits, they're going to have a huge tax bill. So there we are. This is kind of the best use of an hour, is to avoid the paycheck to paycheck culture when you're first starting out. Is you have to be tax smart. You have to mind the tax bite. You have to predict what you can afford so you don't overspend. So ignore classic budgets, but use the process. And if you do get a raise, the minute someone gives you a raise, think that you're going to only see 60% of that money and 40% is going to go to taxes. And then the final thought is, hopefully you've now seen how onerous taxes can be, and you're going to take some time to learn about 401ks, learn about IRAs, and that's covered in my book as well. So don't stop learning, and we are going to take questions. But don't stop learning. And in my book, you want to learn about credit reports, credit scores, tax deductions, all sorts of things that will just kind of give you a leg up and help you to keep more of your money and hopefully earn some money too on investments and things like that. It's all in the book, and you can get the book at Scattered Books or the Village Bookstore. And the reason you see the bunny is that Scattered Books is famous for having, I don't know, what do they have, 7 bunnies in there?
They have quite a few, and they're free to roam the store.
It's actually an adorable bookstore.
Right.
And I love all bookstores, and the owners of both of these bookstores are amazing. And so here's a final thought. check out the website, make sure you use the process and you know your nut and you track your expenses. If you have any questions, you can always email me, but we can take questions now. And if you follow Money in Your 20s on Instagram, you'll always see when the next seminar is. I have a seminar that's less intense than this for younger people called How to Get Started in Financial Literacy. So if you have like, some younger people that you're interested, this would be too much for them. A bunch of those are coming up in September. So do we have questions?
No, we have nothing yet, but I know that people are probably busy writing down your email address. Just so you know, you could always go to our website and click on the video, the archived video, and then just scroll down and click on it, and then just go ahead with it till you get to the end, and you'll always be able to get to this information that I know that most of you will want. So thank you. So I'm just waiting if there's any questions. You were so thorough. I can't understand how there could be any questions.
Well,
even though I've lived a life, I've learned so much already. It was like, this is great for, young students going out on their own, but it's also good, for young couples. Some people don't always know how to work with money. It's not common sense, as you said in the beginning. It's something that you have to investigate if you're going to have a successful money disbursement, because otherwise you'll fall apart.
Yeah, so I really think if people are going to get married, they should really spend some time on some of these concepts, because it's the number one thing people argue about, right? Yeah. And why argue? Why have a subjective argument when you can have objective knowledge? Like the numbers are the numbers. There's nothing to argue about.
Statistics are statistics. And I really like the way you divided it into 12 parts and then again into the 3, because that's something I've never seen done before. And that's a really unique way. And it's really so obvious once you do that, I really thought that was a very interesting way to do that. So I'm sure most of the people here, we do have quite a few, are interested in that. But it seems that nobody is interested in asking any more questions. Right. So I want to thank you and thank everybody for attending. And I hope I'll see you on Friday when we have the art lecture on Gerhard Richter, which is at 2:00 this coming Friday. Please register on the Chappaqua Library website, which is chappaqua.library.org. And also, if you want to send this information to friends of yours who you would like them to go through it, just, click on the website and send it over, copy and paste, and they'll be able to see this lecture. So again, I see everybody's leaving already. So thank you again, Kristen, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Kristen?
Yes.
Let me just be sure everybody's off. Yeah, they're all leaving. We had 17 at one point. Which was pretty good, yes. And I'm telling you, people will go all over. They will be on the website with this. This is a program that it is time sensitive, but it's not time sensitive. In other words, that was a really nice way you did that. By dividing and dividing. I really, I did my own budget when I got divorced, and I went through all this. Oh my God, how do I know what I'm doing? And I, figured it out. I got a financial advisor, that whole stuff. But doing it your way it's just there in your face. You can't miss it.
And I hope it's empowering, right? Because you very quickly get down to some numbers you can work with.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
So I spent a long time. I mean, the 50-30-20 is like sort of the most popular thing right now. And I don't think it works. Yeah. So I was like, well, what would I say if I had the chance to guide young people and keep them out of trouble? And literally, I just thought for months and months and months. And I tried so many things, because you also want it to be simple. It has to be really
It has to be simple, right?
Or nobody will do it.
That's right.
And I was well, this is what I've got.
It's so simple. It's like, are you kidding me? Of course. It's like, why didn't I think of this before? It just doesn't make sense.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I loved it. You're very clear. You kept going over your same points, came back where you got your numbers from, where you got everything. You're a very clear presenter. So thank you for that. You
I
probably
can't wait to watch it. I've never actually watched myself.
Oh, well then, once you get it on the tape, you could what do you call it? You could copy it and put it on your page or something. A lot of our presenters do that.
Yeah,
They
I have
put
a
it on.
gal who does my website. I don't know
Okay.
how to do anything like that, but I have a terrific gal and I'll make sure she does that. But
Okay.
it's really fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much and good luck, and thank you again, because Ron Lieber and I have we didn't speak, but we emailed each other, and we're going to have him in
That's
the middle
fantastic.
of February. So
I can't wait for his book. I have a 16-year-old. What's to pay for college? I'm like, I always tell my 16-year-old, great or state. And she thinks I'm joking. She thinks I'll pay for anything.
Oh no, I see what my kids say with my grandchildren. Oh my God, there's so much. But they're, thank God, going off into school. And so we'll see how that all goes. So again,
thank you.
Thanks. And good luck with your book. Good luck with your career.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Anytime. Bye-bye.